Hey guys, this is Justin back with an engineer's perspective, and welcome to my dirty workbench. Messy, rather. I did a post about this, well, I replied to a post about this on a chef's knife group in Facebook, so that's the inspiration for this video. I've also just really into the mood for sharpening. Just a few days ago I realized it's been a while since I've sharpened, and then I just got these two Choceras in 800 3K. And yeah, I'm feeling sharpening. So I'm gonna do some sharpening videos. They might even supplant some of the regularly scheduled other videos, I don't know. But I've been wanting to do a video on sharpening progression. And I'm gonna break it up into two parts. This is the 101 Intro Rules of Thumb class. And then what I'm more interested in doing is gonna be the 102, which is going to go more in depth into like the specific type of stones that you're using and the specific steels that you're using and the intended use. But mostly those first two things, but also the third thing is pretty important. But today we're just gonna do some basics. So you're just getting started out into sharpening. I remember being here too. I remember watching videos from Triple B, and he was saying things like this and it just did not make any sense to me. So number one right off the bat is, if you want to learn this stuff and get better at it, the best way to do it is you just got to get into it. Just buy some stones, whatever, and just start doing it and learn. That's the only way this will really click probably. But anyways, let's get into it. So I got two rules of thumb. First rule of thumb is you want to minimize the number of stones, all right, in your progression. So the more stones you have, the more steps you take, you're going to start making more mistakes. So, because what ends up happening is if you have 10 stones in your progression, and actually let's back up. What do I mean when I say progression? I mean, like if I wanted to sharpen my knife, I'll go 400 grit, 800 grit, 3000 grit, and then strop. That four-step process is a progression, okay? But the more stones you have, it adds up all the mistakes that you made. So every grit, you're using your hands to sharpen, and less so on a fixed angled system. So that's why for like a mirror polish, I recommend fixed angled systems, because you make less mistakes and you can do those jumps. But especially when you're hand sharpening, is you'll make mistakes on each grit, and by the time you get to your sixth grit jump, you've accumulated so many mistakes, your results will be lackluster. So good rule of thumb is try to do 2 to 4 steps maximum. So like a grit or a progression that I will do to stick to that 2-step is like I'll do a DMT fine 4-micron strop. Nothing else. Or another one that I do is like a 800 grit King Neo, or this is the 800 grit Chocera, but an 800 grit, and then go to a 1-micron strop. That's an example of a 2-stepper right there. And really, a lot of people don't consider the strop as one of the steps, and I tend not to either, but I think for simplicity, just consider it a step. So rules of thumb, 2 to 4 steps in your progression, okay? So how do you choose those steps? That's rule number 2, is your grit jumps should roughly double. And the higher the grits, the bigger that jump can be. And there's nuance to that I'm not going to talk about. But I've got a few examples here. So like some common ones would be like a 400 grit, double it to 800, and then you roughly double it 1600, but it's actually up to 3000, and then you go to a 1-micron strop. So as you get to those higher grits, you're going to make bigger jumps usually. But it's really, especially in these lower grits, like if you're going to start like on your KME, it's built into the stones you buy. You start at 140, then you go to 300, 600, 1500. See how it basically doubles every time? So those are some examples. Another one is like 600, 1000, 5000, 1-micron strop. And then like this DMT here, it's coarse fine, and the coarse side is 320, then the fine side is 700, and then this is a 4-micron strop here. So this is right in my hand is a great sharpening progression. This is like my preferred sharpening progression actually for a lot of high vanadium pocket knives. I really like the results of this. And then just as a note, 1 micron is really roughly 15,000 grit, and 4 micron is really roughly 3,000 grit. If you're trying to make that make sense in your head. So really this 320, 700, 4,000, which is a 3K, is basically the same as that top progression. Just the reasoning behind this is roughly that if you go straight from 400 to say 5,000, is the two things are happening. Number one is you can't remove all the scratches unless you spend a super, super long time. Remember, you want to minimize steps, but you also want to minimize time on each stone. So, you know, if you only want to do 2 stones, 400 to 5,000, so you're only doing 2 steps, good job you followed this rule, but you're going to spend forever on the 5,000 grit stone trying to remove the scratches from the 400. And the other part of this nuance, and it's super important at the low grits and less important at the highs, is that at these really low grits, like the physical ball, you know, shape of abrasive is so large that like the apex of your edge is going to be roughly that diameter. So let's say that a 400 grit stone is roughly like 70 microns in diameter, and this is your knife edge. The distance between my 2 fingernails there, between those 2 fingernails, is going to be that 70 microns, that 400 grit. So when you go up to the 5,000 grit, and that's actually like a 3 micron particle, that means that you have to cut away all of those microns from 70 down to 3, right? So you need to reduce the distance between my fingernails from 70 microns to 3 microns. That is a lot of work to do. So you have to whittle it down, sharpen it down until the distance, your actual apex width, is 3 microns. Does that make sense? And that takes a super long time when you make these big jumps. So when you roughly are doubling these, then that's when you really see the like efficiency. It's the most efficient way to reduce that 70 micron radius down to say like 35 microns. And to explain, well, that's probably enough. So those are the rules of thumb. If you're just getting out, starting sharpening, pick 2 or 3 grits, stones or grits that you want to do. Like if you go and look at the available choceras, they'll have like 400, 600, 800, 1K, 2K, 3K, 5K, 8K, 10K. You're not supposed to buy all of those, okay? You just decide where you want to end and where you need to start, and then fill in between as you need. So just pick probably something in the 800 range, and then either a lower one or a higher one, something like that. So just pick a few of them, and then this is how you determine which ones to pick. So just do that. And then, so that's pretty much all I've got. Yeah, that's it. So that's Sharpening Progression 101. I'm going to turn off the camera and turn it back on and do a 102. So I'll be right back. But thanks for watching, guys. Bye.